Hi, what's talking? That's right, me. Welcome. This video is about the topic being offensive and what is offensive. I think that especially nowadays this topic should be discussed way more. People are calling a lot offensive without even knowing what the words mean, without even taking a second to think, and I think that is dangerous. Offensive in a mental and as an opinional term is to cause anger, displeasure, hate, or make someone uncomfortable by an action. These actions are most of the time verbal when people mean the term offensive. Calling something bad in a few seconds can really destroy a thought, conversation, or maybe even a person. I mean, is it even fair to call someone offensive if they don't even know they're being offensive? Of course, something offensive is an action towards something. The reaction says it's offensive, not the action. Meaning that a person decides what you do is what it is. And that's the main problem. Because people can't always move their action in hope that it is fit for the reaction to be positive. Those are the main problems I'll be discussing in this video. First, are we free to be defensive? First, I think that an important thing to discuss is that are we free to even be defensive or not offensive? Sometimes people need to make certain steps in order to do something, and those steps can cause negative impact. But without those steps, that person can't do something. And this has to do with moral balance or karma. It's kind of injustice like to say that someone needs to make sure all of the time to be as little as offensive as possible, and even then, sometimes people have to choose for things they care more about. It's the whole principle of would you steal bread to help your family, because that baker might be less fortunate without that bread, but it will make you more fortunate, and you are important. I think that people who defend themselves or are offensive anyways, even though the others don't want them to, get pulled to the side for being egotistic too quickly. You are not free to not be offensive because it's not your choice. It's a choice of the person who feels offensive, and as much as you can try pleasing everyone, you can't please everyone. I think that this can also be improved with something that Jordan Peterson said, and I know there has been some debate about him and that some people very much dislike him, but I just want to talk about this one quote without that context. The line is, in order to think, you have to risk being offensive, and I think that is also important sometimes. People will always make bad actions on others if they try a good action on themselves or others in some way. That's just bound to happen. Therefore, I don't think you are free to not be offensive. Because being offensive can only be judged by reaction, most of the time people do the action don't even know they are being offensive. You can know your actions, but you need way more context from others to judge if you were being offensive. It's unfair, of course, if you do not know, although that can also be said from the other side. I mean, it's unfair if you don't know that you were being offensive, but it's also unfair if you are offensive to someone and that person themselves doesn't even know it. A good example is bullying, and then I mostly mean verbally. In most scenarios with bullying, the person who gets bullied doesn't even know that he is being bullied, and therefore not knowing they're being offended. Only much later, and the sad part is that most times then it's already too late. And then you can even go as far as saying, well, if being offensive is only the reaction that says it, but if the person doesn't give a reaction that claims that it is offensive, what the fuck is being offensive then? And that, my boy, I can't answer. Some things in life don't need thinking, they are just actions. Another thing is that is it fair to call something offensive and judge that person for it if that person itself doesn't understand being offensive themselves? Again, a good example is bullying. Most of the time, the bullies generally don't understand that what they are doing is wrong. Of course, then yes, it's still offensive, but how far would you go to judge that person for it if their knowledge is so limited on it? But to get back to the point, I think it's important for people to therefore understand that something can be offensive, yes, but the judgment for it does need to check first if that person understands the bad moral of their actions. And now, of course, the final thing. So now imagine this. You have done something offensive to a person, that person calls you out for it. You know that you were being offensive, and you could have done a morally better action by not doing it. But here's the thing. Do you care about that person's opinion? And this is the last piece of the puzzle. As offender, you also need to judge the person who calls you out for it and if you should respect them and follow them. I mean, both parties need to agree that it's a problem in order to solve it, which makes it even more hard. It's also important to say that how far would you go to respect someone and which person? I mean, I don't think you would really try to be less offensive to a criminal who killed 3 kids. And it's also weirdly with knowing. I mean, most of the time, people are way nicer and therefore try to be less offensive towards strangers because they hope that those strangers are also nicer to them. But anyway, I think it's a bit scary that the word offensive gets shouted way too much and then people immediately take the side of the offended without even knowing the context sometimes. I mean, the person saying that they have been offended can, of course, also have been offensive to the so called offender. People always try to be more offensive to people they hate. I mean, the whole revenge part also plays a role in it. So, now finally, my personal opinion. I don't think my opinion is that important, but I do think it could be interesting for you guys. First of all, as much as it sounds weird, I don't try to not be offensive to people. I try to connect my moral compass with theirs as much as I can. And that might sound as the same thing, but the difference is that I also respect my own opinion a lot, and that if I don't connect on a moral level with a person, I don't care. Most people have this opinion, and I think it works the best. Therefore, you give more respect to people who are in your group and less to the outside. Although the difference is that I personally do take this to a more extreme level than others. For example, I don't care if a YouTuber is offensive to some people if the people who watch him don't care. That YouTuber is providing for his group and his group is enjoying it. He gives respect to the people who are in his group and less to the outside, and I think that's fine. To, of course, a certain level, but still. And of course, you can also always say that those words were not meant for you. When groups with different morals start fighting, I think morally that doesn't really matter that much anymore. Because both morals of the groups are different anyways. I mean, you can try to fuse the morals together and come to a certain agreement, but then those groups don't stand for the same morals anymore and just become two groups into one. And then again, you have a group of people agreeing with each other and less with the outside, and it just goes on into infinity. For everyone, of course, it's different. If you want to fight for your right, then go ahead and fight. Respecting your own morals, I think, is the most important thing in a person. Start with that, then the rest. If you don't agree, then you don't. That's your choice, no one else's. So, to conclusion, you could say that the deepest of moments, I don't really care to be honest. I'm not the guy in the boxing match. I'm the guy who sits on the couch eating Cheetos while watching. And I think that most people truly are that person, and that's fine. But yeah, to not grapple too much in thinking and more into saying, I think that you should respect your own morals and then others. Because being a good person starts with respecting yourself and then taking judgment. First think, then do. So when it comes to people being offensive, as long as they do it for the majority of the group, I wouldn't care too much as an outside person. Just do as you wish in that case. As long as you don't start following weird gods and start shanking people in the streets. But to be honest, that's with almost anything moral. There's always a gray area. But yeah, that's the ending of my video. I know it might have ended a bit confusing as hell, but that's kind of with everything philosophical. At the end, it just goes into a rabbit hole and everybody just gets confused. So sorry for that, but as long as you get the main points, then it's fine. I hope you guys like this video. And of course, the most important thing, leave your opinions in the comments because I think that's the most important thing, and I like to discuss with people what they think about this topic. So, yeah.